Mike, we're gonna have to. Was it Mike or Chris that has been tweeting about your rad bike going up City
it's
Creek?
been me.
Yeah, we gotta meet up. I've been doing that same route. I live on 13th Ave, so we have to meet up and go for a bike ride together.
Nice.
That needs to happen.
Nice.
All right. Enough chit chat. So we do have a quorum. So this is the August 18th board meeting of UTRU. Currently we have Chris Stout, Mike Christensen, and John Pearson on the phone or on the line. Austin Whitehead will not be attending this evening and have not heard from Randy. So we'll let him in if he hops on, but we do have a quorum. So let's go ahead and get started. First item is the approval of the July minutes. Did everybody get a chance to take a look at that and have any issues, any questions? Okay, I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the July minutes.
Okay,
Seconded.
Mike, John seconds. All in favor?
And I will vote for.
All right, I think that works. Okay, let me just write this down for the minutes. Okay. All right, so let's start moving on to our agenda. There was an updated agenda sent out the other day. Chris had a couple of extra items that he wanted to include, which of course is not a problem. Happy to do that. So first item on the agenda is, well, after the approval of the minutes, is just my update of my activities since our last meeting. Let me pull my notes over here. So since the last meeting, I put in 15 hours since July 21st. As far as outreach is concerned, the only thing that I've really been able to do this month is I put out that bike transit survey. Mike, thank you so much for hitting retweet pretty much every single time. It's much appreciated. I was originally going to close it yesterday, but I actually had a really good meeting with Bike Walk Provo. And so they're going to be putting it out to their members over the next couple of days. So I've decided to keep it open for another week or so. As far as response on that, last I checked, it was at about 50 responses that have been filled out and completed that weren't, joke responses. So, I mean, it's a moderate success, I would say. Of those 50, it's worth adding. We converted about 20 people into members. I'll get to that in a second. But I think there is value in and of itself of doing transit surveys and things like that. But there's also another recruiting tool that we can use. So I think that's something that we should keep in our back pocket, just to kind of keep in mind as we continue to reach out. If there's an issue that you guys are concerned about, because as a reminder, that's where the survey came from, it is worth our time to start putting those surveys together, get a result. As far as my plans on that, once I do close it, probably within a week or so, actually, I was just thinking September 1 would be when I close it. Then what I will do is I will fully compile that data, turning it into a report that we can then send over to UTA based off of their response, based off of the response we received, I should say. So that's kind of my game plan on that one. Let's see, back to the activity report. Speaking of UTA, I actually had a really good meeting with Jay Fox, the executive director of UTA. I know I kind of sent that briefing a couple weeks ago, but was there anything in that, if you recall, that you had questions about? Otherwise, I can just kind of give the brief recap.
Yeah, you can do the recap.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was a good conversation. It was a good 45-minute call that he and I were on, and in that I can't emphasize enough kind of how enthusiastic he was to see that we were a group that existed. He wants to work together with us. He sees us as a potential partner, and he has offered his services as the executive director. So one of the things that we can do, for example, is for our annual meeting, I'm going to ask him to either be able to speak or at least do something recorded. I think he's more than willing to help us out with that. I submitted the grant proposal I gave over to UCare. as far as the advocacy and outreach training. I talked to him about that. I submitted that over to him. He said that seems like a great idea. He sent it off to, I forget the official title, but basically community outreach person. And they're going to see what they can do about funding on that one as well. So that was a pretty positive step in the right direction. We also talked about kind of the future of UTRU and UTA possibly working together on things from a lobbying standpoint, keeping in mind, of course, that we are a nonprofit, a 501c3, so we're somewhat limited in what we can do. But there are certain things we can do that, UTA can't. And so I think the biggest thing that I want to kind of get across to you guys, it was an extremely positive meeting. He was excited to hear we existed. He's excited to hear that we were doing things. He seemed receptive when we talked about things like bike lanes and trains with more bike racks on cars and things like that. He seemed really receptive to what we had to say. So I think that hopefully, knock on wood, this is the start of a good, positive relationship with UTA, where we can work together, still point out issues that need to be resolved. But I very much got the impression that we're on the same page. So good meeting on that one as well. Let's see. So that was on fundraising. Oh, Nicole Bordeaux, Chief Planning and Engagement at UTA, is who he has forwarded that on to. And he said, let me know. I'll keep harassing me. So we'll keep an eye out on that. Also on the fundraising front, I've registered us with the Rocky Mountain Power Foundation. They are interested. We're probably not going to be able to do much until Q2 of 2023, just because that's when they're going to be taking applications for community enhancement. We might be able to make a case for Q4 of this year. That's more of like the health-oriented stuff. I could probably come up with something, but most likely Q2, June 15th to be precise, is when those are due. We're probably not going to be able to do much with them until Q2 of next year, but it's still something. We're still in the system. We're ready to go once that gets a little bit closer. Going to the networking side of things, like I said, I met with Jay Fox. Also, like I said, met with Bike Walk Provo Bike Walk, excuse me.
Curtis, before you, point of personal privilege. The Q4 health-oriented grants. Can you just send me a follow-up note about that with some info? We might be able to throw something together, coming from my perspective.
Sure. Just write that down so I don't lose it. Not that this isn't recorded, but still. Okay, yeah. All right. Okay, so yeah, I met with Jay Fox, met with the board of Provo Bike Walk. They thought that they were very much under the impression that we only focused on trains, not necessarily the entire transit mix. I explained to them that getting to a bus stop is just as important as using a bus itself. So they seemed to be they were more open than when I kind of walked into that meeting. So had a really positive meeting with them actually on Monday, or Tuesday, excuse me, this past Tuesday. So that went pretty well. They've invited me to speak to their general organization, the general members, either in September or October. They're just looking for a time, so I'm waiting to figure out kind of what that will look like as well. So I'll keep you up to date on that, but it looks like we can start to get Provo roped in as well, and then start reaching out to the southern end of the valley. Yesterday, I had a call with Joel Batterman. He is the executive director of the Transit Riders Union, or the Transit Riders of the U.S. Together, or Trust. They are a nationwide organization, basically what we do, but all across the nation. They bring transit rider unions together in order to kind of share ideas, share concepts, what is everybody's working on. And then I'll have an action point on that in a second, but had a really positive relationship. He was excited to see kind of that UTRU is back up and running. And so he invited us to join that membership. It's free of charge. It is mostly, as of right now, looks like Randy is wanting in, so we'll let him in. Hello, Randy. We're just going along. I know you're muted right now, but welcome aboard. Randy, I'm just giving my update as far as what I've done over the previous month. I see it looks like you're having a good time at the Gateway. So, let's see. So I was, like I said, met with Joel Batterman. Looks like the maximum, well, not the maximum, but the realistic time commitment is going to be an hour a month. Just coming out of their board, their national organization meetings, and just kind of talking and discussing what everything's going on. He also was kind enough to kind of alert me to a couple of fundraising options, specifically. Apparently, there's an organization called Transit Center out of New York, and then actually the Ben and Jerry's Foundation. He suggested as well. So I'm going to be looking into those over the coming months and see if we can't do anything with that as well. So on that note, I know I'm in the middle of my things, but I would like to ask the board if they would, first of all, if I could get a motion for us to join trust. Like I said, free of charge. It is just a group of organizations, but I figured I want to run that past you guys first. Get your official approval on that. So if I could get a motion,
I'll make the motion.
Okay, Chris motion. Is there a second?
Mike's head's bobbing off like a bobblehead.
Yeah. Give Mike that one.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All righty, sounds good. So all those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, so yeah, I will go ahead and get us formally registered with that. Like I said, pretty good meeting. I was pretty happy with how that went as well. As far as upcoming activities, this coming Monday is actually going to be a busy one for me. So I have a meeting scheduled with Ron Dunn. He is the president of the Amalgamated Transit Union of Utah. So basically the union for like the bus drivers, train drivers. I just kind of want to talk to him and kind of let him know what we're up to. Alex Cragen, former board member, said that he was really interested in talking to us. So I will be reaching out to him on Monday. And then also on Monday, I'm going to be meeting with Connor Dunstan. He is on the Redline podcast, if you listen to that one. He is looking to kind of, and John's already kind of familiar with this too. He's kind of been on the notes, but he's interested in setting up a, kind of like how we talked about geographically based chapters. He wants to set up one specifically for the U and students up at the U. So I'll be meeting with him Monday evening at 6. If anybody wants to be on that one, John in particular, since you were in those conversations, great. But otherwise, we'll just kind of be discussing ideas, options on how we can get a formal chapter, make it our first chapter even, of, you know, U-True-U of U or whatever it's called. So I'll be meeting with him on Monday as well. And then
just on that,
yeah.
so I met with him already.
Okay.
Very good kid. Young gentleman. Who is really knowledgeable, just starting off in college, and I think there is a lot of potential there for organizing. I connected him already with the active transportation group expert manager at the U, and trying to synchronize, you know, goals of his group that he's building with goals of you know, internal goals of development at the U. And so yeah, looking forward to meeting more with him. And then on Amalgamated Transit Union of Utah, I know we're a right to work state. You know, very Orwellian named type of policy. Do we have any idea how many UTA members? UTA workers are actually members of the union?
You know, I honestly don't know. To be perfectly honest with you, I'd imagine a fair amount. Those type of professions tend to be more unionized, even in Utah. But I honestly do not know the answer to that question. So, like I said, definitely be something we can discuss. The other thing I kind of plan on discussing with him is just, you know, how can we get the buy-in from the bus drivers? How can we get them to start talking about it a little bit more, even if it's informally, just amongst their friends or whatever. I figure it's a good kind of grassroots way for us not to be advertising per se, but you know, if the bus driver says, "Hey, yeah, we're kind of grumpy about this too, passenger. Here's an organization that we can point you to." If we can kind of finagle that so we're not doing it, that shouldn't run afoul too much. But I just want to feel him out, see what he wants to talk about, and kind of take it from there. but I think that'd be a good part. It'd be kind of funny if we're simultaneously talking to the executive board of UTA and also the union members all at the same time, and we're all, you know, working together towards this common thing. I just find that interesting that we appeal to many groups. As far as membership numbers, so just to let you know, 51 new Twitter followers since last month, compared to 71 the time before, but we're now sitting at 327, up from 276. We have gotten 29 new subscribers / members over the last month. That's up from 19 the month prior. So we're now sitting at 75 formal members as part of this. So, I mean, membership numbers are going in the right direction. I think a continued effort with things like surveys. Twitter has been the strategy I spoke about previously of directing people towards the membership page as they become subscribers to the Twitter page seems to be a successful one. If I had to make a rough guesstimate, I would probably say about 1 out of every 5 tend to make that conversion. So that's a plus. As I said, with the survey results, asking and reaching out for those surveys also that's actually a really high membership application rate. I'd probably say out of the 50 or so that we've probably gotten about 15, 20 signing up and saying, yes, I want to be a member. So I think that's an effective strategy as well. So yeah, so that's my activities update. Are there any questions on that? All right. The next thing I have on the agenda, let's see, oops, I got to pull it up again. The next thing I had on the agenda was the JFox meeting. I already kind of talked about that, but were there any other questions concerning that? Okay. The next agenda item I actually had was the Vineyard Stop activity recap. As you know, there was not an activity. So I kind of want to do a post-mortem on that as to why. I think probably the biggest roadblock was the fact of that email that Chris sent out kind of saying that UTA does not allow any of this sort of stuff. And even if we had the blessing of the ED, I think that kind of put the kibosh on everything. Bike Walk Provo Bike Walk also said that we really combine our stuff to the city of Provo. And so they weren't necessarily interested in doing it at Vineyard. I was a little disappointed in that, but it is what it is. And then the last thing is, I think, honestly, if I'm being honest, I think it's just that we wanted to get these schedules out and put together, and we just didn't have enough time to do it. So I mostly wanted to bring that up as a lessons learned. If anybody has anything that they want to add, obviously there's not any plans for a major train station opening anytime soon, but like, for example, the one that's coming to mind is the opening of the Ogden BRT line. We've got time to plan for that. If we want to do some sort of activities around that, I mean, that's a good year away. So just kind of any thoughts, ideas as far as how we can kind of address this in the future. If anybody has anything.
So I'm a little confused. So the UTA does not allow any outside organization to have a presence at these events or to have handouts, and what are the kind of like, you know, First Amendment implications of that? And is it only on their property that they're allowed to do this? They are a public entity, so it's a little tricky. On their
property, you can't you can't do anything. You can't pass out flyers. You can't set up a megaphone. I mean, essentially, it's private property. And they have ordinances against doing anything that is not either getting on the train or getting on the bus or getting off the train or getting on the bus, off the bus. You can't, there's just nothing that you can do that UTA will sanction. And I mean, and there's obviously a lot of reasons for that, because you know, anybody could set up a protest or a demonstration. Now, I mean, we could do it, but the problem is that you know, it goes contrary to what you know, to what their stated purpose is. So they would basically call in the police department and have us potentially arrested. So and again, I mean, this goes back for, I mean, and then this is not unusual. Most transit agencies across the U.S. have some sort of policy or procedures that basically outlines things that people can and can't do. And again, if it's anything other than getting on or off the train or bus, it's simply not allowed.
Yeah, and so I mean, you can argue. So from a practical standpoint, yeah, you could try to argue a First Amendment issue, but I mean, the cases are pretty much solid on that one. And then to follow up with that, personally, I don't think it's wise for us to burn that bridge. And so, and I know that's not what you're saying, but it's just something worth keeping in mind. And so, UTA's policy, as Chris kind of said, follows a lot of organizations like this, where you either have to allow it all or you don't allow it at all. And UTA, like most organizations or most other transit agencies, say, okay, well, we just won't allow it at all. You are there to use transit, and that is about it. So,
I mean, the one thing that we have not looked into that is potential is to get the authority, because it is allowed, or certain activities are allowed if it's sanctioned by the executive director. So the only way that we can really legally do it is to go through and say, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to hand out these flyers that talk about what bus route, about a bus route or a train route that we think should be in the future. And and we could pursue that with the Ogden BRT if we wanted. I mean, we have time to actually do that. But we would have to get it would have to be sanctioned by UTA. We would have to tell UTA what we want to do, and then they would have to say yay or nay.
So it's worth looking into, especially for Ogden, for example, and where we've already built that relationship, where we're starting to build that relationship. That might be something we want to do in the future. I think this one happened a little too quick. We weren't quite ready, but we've got a little bit of time. We can kind of keep our eye on that going forward. So, anything else anybody wants to add to that before we move on to the next item?
I think it's a good idea to talk to the ED about, and yeah, like it's the adversarial ally, but providing information for how people can, better advocate for transit improvements and communicate with the agency. I think that would be totally appropriate.
Well, I think one of the things that I might actually think you'll be open to, especially if UTA is paying for it, is if we are in an area like Ogden for our advocacy outreach, maybe we do set up something at the Ogden, frontrunner station or something like that. That could be a possibility. So I think the options are available. We have to look into them, obviously, but it could be a possibility. It could be a possibility. Okay, next item. This is actually Chris's. Oh, sorry, Randy, go ahead.
Just back on that. So maybe we just do something that's really low key, not really handing out flyers or trying to talk to people, but just have a sign that says, here it is, and stand there. And if someone comes and talks to us, then that's great. Just something. Yeah,
we would honestly. So what we'd have to do with something like that is we could not be on the property, but if we stood on the sidewalk, that's something we could do potentially. That's another option. But the property
unless they
itself,
approved us, if they gave us approval to just go stand there and not hand out flyers, then
no, I mean, if they give us approval, then that opens up our possibilities quite a bit. Because I mean, again, there is a transit interest in what we are doing. The executive director has said as much, that he encourages kind of what we're working on. So again, that's certainly something we could look into for the next stages. I just don't think it quite came together on this one. So yeah. All right, next item is actually Chris, the September quarterly meeting discussion.
Yeah, so basically what we've done in the past with quarterly meetings, and the next two meetings are going to be crucial because, well, the September one has traditionally been a springboard into the annual meeting, and that, you know, those people that are interested in serving as a director or, you know, whatever. So the idea is that our September meeting is, you know, we do something, you know, a couple of suggestions I have is maybe we talk about this idea about bikes on buses, bikes on trains. We explore that a little bit more. Perhaps maybe getting Andrew Gruber from Wasatch, from the Wasatch Planning Agency. I always forget the name. Wasatch Council of People who want to plan stuff.
Wasatch Front Regional
That's
Council.
cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Which only applies to the northern part of the Wasatch, well, the central part of Wasatch Front, because it is only Salt Lake County. Or no, maybe it does go up to Ogden. I don't remember. But anyway, maybe we get Andrew Gruber to come out and talk about the plan of how the bike infrastructure is supposed to work. And then maybe we have UTA come out and talk about, you know, what issues they face in actually implementing that plan. But again, the idea is that we have to have something, or we should have something planned for people to do to get them involved, so that when we go to the annual meeting in October, our annual meeting in October, in Curtis has this set up so we talk about September and October. I'm kind of blurring the lines because they're somewhat in the same boat. So the idea is that we get people interested in September. They say, hey, we say, hey, look, you know, we need more people on the board. We're shorthanded as it is. You know, we've talked about these ideas. Come out, run for a directorship in October. And effectively, our October annual meeting is basically where we talk about what the organization's goals and plan is going to be for the next year. So, you know, those are my ideas. What ideas potentially do you guys have? You know, what should we talk about in September? You know, should we talk about the change day? Should we talk about the shortage of bus operators? Maybe we get somebody from UTA to come out and tell us what criteria has to be met before we can get you know, bus service expanded again. Just as a side note, I went and I got my hair cut today. And normally the way I used to be able to do it is I'd hop on the 209, connect to the 17, and hop off, you know, right out at the street where my barber is, or excuse me, hairstylist. I don't think there's any barbers anymore, but at any rate, so now that the 17 runs every 60 minutes, it didn't show up in the transit app as even as an option. So what I ended up having to do is I took the 45 down to 5th East, took the 205 to 5th East and 17 South, got off there. But then coming back, I had to walk up to 9th East and hop on the 209. So, you know, maybe the meeting that we ask UTA to come out and explain, you know, what the foreseeable future looks like. And Curtis, I think we kind of talked about this a little bit with them when they were talking about the change day, but again, one of the things with UTA is that sometimes it's like Jello, you know, it's hard to nail down, you know, exactly what they're, you know, what they believe the plans are going to be. Now, if it's opening up a rail station or a front runner station, then, you know, that's cut and dried because they get separate funding for that. But the idea of, you know, when is the 205 going to be back to 15 minutes? When is the 45? When is the 220? You know, I can't, and I think I mentioned this last time, and I can't get to the liquor store in less than an hour anymore. And that's pretty,
That's just depressing.
it is. It is, because I used to be able to just hop on that 15-minute 45 and run up to the liquor store, get my stuff, come out, wait a couple of minutes, and then get back on the bus. But now it's a, you know, it's a whole hour and a half. So, so yeah, I mean, what do you think? What do you want to do in September that leads into the October meeting?
Definitely like the idea of having somebody from UTA there, keeping those lines open are really important for communication and advocacy. One thing I've been reading about and thinking about as I'm reading through some literature is bus shelters and bus benches, and the fact that we don't have many of those. I think I've seen like one shelter in all of in all of my time around, and maybe one quasi bench, which is like more of like a single seater bench over in Sugar House on 2100 South, or 21st South. So you know that seems like for chapters and for members a tangible thing that they can do is go out, get some people together in the community and check off how many bus stops actually have some kind of shelter, have sidewalk accessibility. There's some bus stops over on Foothill, by Research Park, where there's a stop. I know the one space where there's a stop that's on the side of a grassy knoll, and there's no sidewalk to it, and there's no area to stand, and you're basically on the side of a highway.
That's okay. Nobody uses it anyway because the bus only comes 60 minutes. So
yeah, I did look at using it when I lived over in that area, and it was never really a realistic possibility for anything feasible.
Yeah.
So
But I think it's important to get people tangible things that they can do, right? Not just we're going to have a discussion with UTA, which is important, of course, but like here's something you can do. Go out, find out how many bus stops are sheltered in your neighborhood, how many have benches. Should that change? Can we talk to your local reps about that, kind of thing? And then they have like an activity, and then it's like, oh, let's report back. Nobody
yeah, I
has
like
about
I
that.
like
So
that
that's
idea.
that brings up another thing I noticed is some of the track stations have no where to sit. I mean, they have those the chairs on one side of the shady spot, but there's no. A lot of them have little places you can sit, like 2100 or whatever, but 7200 South has no benches, no chairs, no concrete things, no nothing. So I don't know why they did it like that.
No, that's a good point. And actually, like, it's the same thing with Frontrunner. I know my Woods Cross station has like 2 benches, and that's about it. And so that's actually not a bad idea as far as something that's actionable for.
But they should have a lot more shade. Even if they don't have benches, they need to have more shade.
Well, and that's not a bad idea too. So if we can start a census of sorts, like I'm sure UTA has that information in the bowels somewhere, but that is definitely something that's actionable. I think again, that's something, now that you bring it up, John, like that is something that we can form those geographic based groups around. That's something that they can quickly and actually do. Anything else that we might want to do? I know we're talking a lot about UTA. Mike, is there anything that you want to focus on as far as more statewide stuff or rail stuff or that we could discuss during the meeting?
Well, just to give an update, we did have a series of meetings on Tuesday with representatives from Colorado and Washington, and had pretty good attendance. And that is leading into the conference that is going to be held in Billings next Monday and Tuesday. Basically, we're getting the message out that the federal government is is wanting to shower states with federal funding for expanding intercity passenger rail. So the opportunities are out there. As we go forward, I definitely want to have UTRU involved in the conversation also. But yeah, right now we're kind of in the same boat where funding is something that is holding us back from really being able to go forward like we want to. But one of the big conversations that I'm going to have when I'm in Billings is there will be representatives from the Federal Railroad Administration to talk about funding opportunities. So I will not only be looking at what is available for the Utah Rail Passengers Association, but also UTRU.
So when is this? When's this meeting coming up?
It's Monday and Tuesday
in Billings.
And Billings. Yes.
Are you going up there?
Yes. Yep. I'll be there.
So you're not obviously taking the train.
Yeah, it put me in a bit of a pickle because there is no train that will. Well, there's no train currently serving Billings, so that's an issue. I knew that bus connections would be pretty terrible, but I did take a look, and it requires either an overnight layover in Butte or somewhere in Wyoming to get there. So that wasn't really an option. Since I got rid of my car 5.5 years ago, renting a car, I looked at current rental prices, and that was out of control. So I'm going to be flying up there and back because that's the best option in this situation.
Yeah, I was curious. Flying is really the only way you can get to Montana anymore. Well, if you're coming from Portland or Seattle, you can go up north with the Empire Builder. But so Curtis, I mean, I think what we're trying to do is put together an agenda for that September meeting.
Yeah.
And personally, I think I like the idea, Mike, if you can kind of give us an update. So if you're willing to stand up and speak on what you're doing, and because obviously, I mean, yeah, I think it's part of it's something important. And I think that John's idea of the bus stop activity for people that show up to the meeting, I think that is good to flesh out. I think we need somebody from UTA planning department to talk about what it's going to take to get the expanded service or not. I mean, let's find out what they can come and tell us. If they can come and say, look, we're not going to have anything for 5 years, or it might not ever come. I mean, if you look at the current Salt Lake County map for bus routes, and I think I mentioned this last time, there's so 14 years ago, going out on the west side in Magna, there were no less than 5 routes. There were 2 regular buses. There was one that came from Tooele, and then there were the 2 fast buses that ran down 35th and up 21st South. Now there's only one. There's only the one 15-minute line, and if you're out in Magna and there's only one line out there. So let's find somebody from UTA that can come out. I think that the idea of the bike infrastructure. So reach out to Andrew Gruber at Wasatch Front.
Mm-hmm.
And see, and he's been out before. He's come out before and talked. If he can't, there might be somebody else that can come out and talk about what the planning is for bike infrastructure. But one of the reasons why I thought we needed to or why I asked that question was that tweet that somebody had posted on about, they showed there were like 6 bikes on a bus.
Mhm.
One of the things I think is that they're pushing the bike infrastructure, but to be honest, there's really no bus or train. There technically there can only be 3 bikes on a bus at a time, right? And if you're that 4th bike rider, what do you do?
Yeah.
I guess pedal all the way to where you were going to go, but
Yeah. Well, and actually, just on that note, like with the Provo Bike Walk, they were talking about just that issue. And some bus drivers have been nice and allowed people on. Others have said, no, you're done. You can't bring any more. And so, that might be a worthy discussion as well. So it's sounding like for September, Mike, if you'd be willing to talk about just kind of what the greater plan is. Maybe John and I, we can talk more about the kind of the local chapter idea of it. Here's an actual activity that you can do in your community. I'll also reach out to UTA just to kind of see about expanding service in what that actually looks like. And then I'll also reach out to Andrew and see if he'd be willing to talk about bike infrastructure in general. And then maybe for October, that's maybe where we invite Jay Fox in. Maybe that's where we talk about, well, that would be where we talk about what we achieved so far this year. Obviously make the push and do elections and that sort of stuff. We'll have to figure out the infrastructure on that.
Yeah, I mean, what we've typically done is the typical October meeting generally does not have anybody from outside the organization.
Okay.
Primarily because, well, 2 reasons. Number one, there's not a lot of time to try to elect people, and if people want to have a discussion, but I think so outside of electing officers, we need to talk about what our priorities need to be for UTRU. And one of the things that I've been pushing is, we need that map. We need those bus routes. We need to figure out what a future transit system looks like, however many trains we have running up and down the street. Like the well, here's something interesting. So, the Mid-Valley connector, right? The Mid-Valley BRT is supposed to go from Murray Central to Salt Lake Community, and it's supposed to be, it says 10 to 15 minutes, right? Well, what's the current service there now? Any idea?
I honestly don't know. I'd imagine it's an hour. It's like anything else.
30 minutes.
Okay.
Because they cut back the 47 and the 45. Well, so this leads a pretty good question. If in a year and a half, 10 to 15 minute service is going to be the norm, why can't we have 10 to 15 minute service now? And so these are priority questions that we need to talk about, that quite frankly, if UTA or anybody from a planning department is there, this idea of let's work together kind of falls apart, because at that point we have to kind of point fingers and say, well, why are these things happening, and how do we prioritize what we want to do, right? And of course my answer is, well, we want 10 to 15 minute service everywhere, running up and down the street 24 hours a day. I want to be able to walk up to 45th South and go get a haircut within 35 minutes, and then hop back on my bus and come back here in 35 minutes. All right. So I would say that the October meeting has to be, where do we want to go? And are you a person that wants to be a director to help us take us to where we want to go?
Okay, no, that's fine by me. I just I want to start like you said, we should start planning that stuff. So, okay, sounds good. Anything else anybody wants to add, either for the September or October meetings?
Yeah, two issues. One, the UTA van pool service.
Yeah.
Not sure if that's September or October that we would have that discussion, but another kind of actionable thing for people to learn about and that they can organize within their workspace or community where they're regularly commuting. I know the UCare grant we'll find out about next week if we're invited to submit a full proposal on van pools at the University of Utah. But it sounds like UTA, from my discussions with them, and now I have kind of like a one-on-one discussion with the Vanpool people and contact with them, is that, we've got 400 vans out there. They're reasonably available, a lot of being used, and they're looking to expand. And there's probably money within the DOT bipartisan infrastructure bill and some of this other climate stuff coming down the pike that will allow them to expand that service out. It's a pretty nice service. So another thing that people can take and organize within their own networks and communities. So I'm not sure if that goes on the September meeting or the October meeting. So that's one thing. And then the other is women on transit. So I work with a lot of women at the university, at the hospital, a lot of nurses. A few things that come up as barriers to using transit. One is safety and perceived feelings of safety. And that kind of ties into lighting and stuff around transit stops, but also around how issues are handled on trains, on the tracks, and on buses when there's kind of harassment issues involved. And then another is the need to bring children around to various activities and trip chaining are another barrier to women on transit. And so perhaps at the September meeting, perhaps at the October meeting, I'm not sure where that would fit in, or perhaps it's something where we put out a survey or a second survey after this one comes back in about bikes. We could do a women on transit survey and then start to specifically target women groups along the Wasatch Front and throughout Utah. And that could be another advocacy group, advocacy set of,
Yeah, and I think that ties into the mandate that I gave Curtis about trying to find women and minorities for the board. And interesting fact, if you look at those survey questions, as of yet, I have not seen any woman that has filled out any of those surveys. They all seem to be men on bicycles.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few, but it is definitely not proportional to the general population.
Yeah. So John, I think that we probably do that in September and start talking about that issue in September. Primarily because it would be nice if, and again, we've had women serve on the board before, but there just hasn't been. They just they don't. Number one, they don't stick around very long. And number two, Ellen, she kind of ticked off the bike people. Because,
yeah. All right. Well,
stuff happens, right?
It happens.
Okay. Well, then we can certainly circle back on that one, but I think you're absolutely right. I think women in transit is something that we should be focusing on as well. And maybe, we come back to that in September. Okay, moving on. So just a discussion points, fundraising contact. This kind of actually leads into a separate question of, does everybody have access to the Teams drive as far as some of the files that I've been putting?
Should.
Good. Okay. I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure. I've created a couple of files in there, so if you know how to navigate Teams, it's available for you to view. As far as kind of some of the contacts, I'm filling it in as I go. I don't have a ton of fundraising contacts, to be perfectly honest with you guys. So if you start hearing things like, for example, I'm going to be putting in that Ben and Jerry stuff. I'm going to be putting in that transit riders or whatever it was, based off the meeting I had the other day, and continue to work that angle. But please fill in that form. If you're aware of, like, the ones that come to my mind are banks and credit unions. They love to do that sort of stuff. And so if you even just hear of something throw it in so I can investigate a little bit more. It may go nowhere, but it may go somewhere. So my big pitch on that is just please continue to fill that in. Along with, there should be another one of organizations to contact. There should be a file in there as well of the contacts I've made to date. And if there are other groups that you know of that might be worth reaching out to, like, for example, if we're talking about women in transit, the Women's Democratic Caucus, for example, would be one we'd want to add and reach out to. And the Women's Republican Caucus. I mean, it's either or, right? So even if you think it's a long shot, throw it on there. The worst they could do is say no, go pound sand. But the more groups we can reach out to, the better. What I will say is the groups that I have reached out to have been very receptive. Even the ones that I didn't necessarily think we would get much of a reception from. So it's worth throwing on there. I guess is what I'm trying to get at. If you put it on there, I'll be sure to follow up and find out what's going on. So just keep that in mind. So
I put a couple of I was able to hop on and I put a couple of things on the Teams file. So excuse me. One is I put a folder with some library documents. I called it a library. And so I threw some some books in there, as well as a transit organizer's manual in there, and a few other things. So you guys can check that out. Two, I also put a chapter in there from Leo Hoff's book around fundraising. And that was from Harriet Hoff, who made one of the largest donations in like University of Utah history, women's sports. I think it was like the biggest to their volleyball team or something. So a donor, and I spoke with her about U-True and ways to approach donors as well. And then also warmed up a contact with McKinsey, who recently moved here and is very interested now in transit after we had some after we made it to Flatbread Neapolitan down in Sugar House together. And highly recommend, by the way, the only reasonably decent pizza, I would say, in the state of Utah. Speaking as a former New Yorker. And also, so there's a couple contacts that I'm looking for to push on, but the document about how to speak to others around donating and around approaching them, I think is important. And so I'm making kind of my goal do that. And then I added also UDOT Innovation, the innovation team. There's a contact there, and they have funding as well. UDOT does. And so around research and innovation. So that's something we can start a conversation about as well. So a few things on there.
Hey, Curtis.
Yeah.
I know the Democratic Party is sometimes unable to put two sticks together to get anything, but I think a lot of that is that people why would you donate to McDonald in the 4th district when she's not going to win? Or I mean, that goes to any congressional candidate. Mm-hmm. So how do you feel that we might be able to and whether we might have to pay for a list?
Maybe. I don't know if we're there yet. Because the nice thing about what we're doing versus the Democratic Party is people actually see that transit can be effective. And so, I mean, I'm not opposed to paying for a list. I just don't know if we've even exhausted the freer options. Kind of along that same route, I have a personal relationship with Mike Weinholz, for example. He ran for governor quite a while ago. And I mean, he's got some deep pockets as well. I'm trying to start to warm up that relationship. And so, I'm not opposed to it. I'll work any list I'm given, but where we haven't even really started to fill out the freebie list yet, I just don't. I don't know if we're there yet. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like,
all right, we'll see. We'll see if I'm there yet when I come to write a $2,000 check in January again.
No, I know, and I can understand that, and I can appreciate that. But
I mean, I will, but
No, and I don't want you personally financing everything either, right? Like this should be a freestanding organization. What I am finding is as I'm talking to more and more people, as I'm getting those things like, have you talked to X? Have you talked to Y? And no, I haven't. I will reach out and I will start to do
Well,
it. So,
just as long as you're thinking along those lines,
oh
and
yeah,
and if it's if it's something where I have to come up with some extra money to
get a
um
list, yeah.
to get a list, then that we will do that. Because again, between today and 3 months ago, we've come quite a long way that we have for the last 8 years. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll put it that way. So
No, I mean, I definitely think we've kind of, I think we're starting to enter that second phase of an organization where we've got our ground, we've got our feet, people are starting to know who we are again. And so people are directing us towards funding sources that we may not otherwise have been aware of and contacts that we may not have been otherwise aware of. And so kind of my personal plan as the ED over the next 3 months really is to start working that fundraising side, while not ignoring the membership side of things as well, of course. But now that we're kind of established, people know who we are, it's a little bit easier for me to get in and talk to people. And with that comes money, to be perfectly honest. With the appreciation that you're cutting the check, for the most part, I think give me a little bit of time is what I would say on that.
all right, that sounds good.
Chris,
Um,
I spoke with my accountant as well, so I may be in a position to put a little bit more down than I have in the past. So to support the organization, and we could talk about that.
Well, yeah, and I mean,
that
and
looks
that's
like.
that's been one of the one of the drawbacks is that people, at least prior to Curtis, PC prior Curtis. So PC, it was like, what we always kept talking about was, well, if we had an executive director, and then I was always like, well, an executive director is going to cost money. And then it was always, well, if we build up the base, then the base is providing us money. And I'm going, well, the voter, the union dues aren't going to cover it, right? For what we need to do, we need. So again, my personal financial commitment is there. But yes, John, my personal belief is that in order to get where we really want to be next year, we're gonna have to we have to come over that hump, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, if you can contribute more, great. And that goes with you too, Mike.
And Randy and everybody else that might be listening to this.
But I'm only joking, because I realize that that everybody's financial pockets aren't as deep as other people. So
well, I mean, I'll say this. I think I wasn't intending to, well, it was on fundraising, so I guess it's kind of related. But like, I think we're at that weird, awkward, adolescent phase where we're kind of in between and we're getting ready to make that leap. But I think, like I said, my personal plan is over the next 3 months to really start focusing on that now that we have a established kind of MO as far as how we work. And so hopefully we can start bringing some money in. Hopefully this can be more self-sustaining and that we don't have to rely on individual members. I think there should be a buy-in. I think union dues should still be a thing. But I do want it to be relatively low. Like I wouldn't want it to be more than the cost of your, how much does it cost you to take transit in a day? That's your union due or something like that. Anyway, that's kind of where I'm at personally on that one. Let's see. Oh, I skipped over one item. September newsletter articles. I know that we've already had, Austin's already had one that I wasn't able to publish in time, so he's already covered. But I would really like you guys, if you can do even 250 words, so that we can put it together, that would be great. Maybe Mike, if you want to give an update on what you guys are working on, tell us about how the Billings convention goes. John, if you kind of want to talk maybe about it. Well, no, you actually submitted two. I don't know if I got that in. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was in the July one, I
That
think.
was in the July one. That's right. So,
I'm happy to write another article.
Okay.
I have some other ideas. So,
and Chris, if you want to complain about how your bus doesn't take you to the barber in time, something like that.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking about. Is
Yeah.
Mid-Valley carless
Okay.
is tough to get around. I have no idea what anybody south of me does, because they've got
Sure.
no 15-minute lines south of the 209.
And then Randy, I don't know if you're listening in or not, but if you are, it's maybe something along the lines of development. I don't know if you're intimately familiar with what's going on at the southern end of the valley with Point of the Mountain, but maybe if you can write an article about that, that'd be great. I know that you're on mute. I know you were walking around. It looked like you were at a conference, so I can also follow up with him there as well. But just spitballing ideas here. I would like to get that September one out as early as possible so that it can advertise the September meeting. So I'm really shooting for September 1 for that to be out. So if you can start thinking on that, I'll start harassing you guys accordingly for that. Okay, we are at an hour and 10 minutes. The last agenda item is the open forum. Is there anything anybody would like to discuss? Hearing crickets.
I think the woman on transit thing, we should think about a survey about that, and that survey targeting women groups in Salt Lake or along the Wasatch Front and throughout Utah, reaching out specifically to them to get their feedback. And then there was one thing I wanted to bring up in the open forum: ads on buses and transits. I noticed in the Northeast, there's quite a few in the transit agencies I've ridden on, and they're for all sorts of things. A lot of them are for shady lawyers. But there seems to be a advertising space for things in our buses, and there's not much there. So maybe that's something, Curtis, you can look into and find out. It seems like a great way to reach out to potential members. Just have a U-True ad on the buses.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure I could look into that. I'm sure it's not cheap, but I wonder if, having the ear of the ED of UTA might grease those wheels a little bit. See what we can do there. That might be a possibility. I can see that. And then I can also look at the other transit agencies as well. Obviously, we talk a lot about UTA, but one of the things I found interesting about the survey, I actually got a decent amount from the Cache Valley that have done it as far as the proportion. So I find that interesting, as we've got some people up in Logan that are paying attention to what we're doing too. So yeah, I can start to kind of look at advertising costs.
If only there was a train to Logan.
If only there was a train to Logan, but there's no way of getting over that hill.
I'm working on it.
Okay. Okay, anything else anybody wants to discuss?
The question is why there isn't a bus to Logan.
Yeah, that's a real question. That's doable today. Okay. Anything else anybody wants me in particular to focus on, needs me to do, that we haven't already discussed? Otherwise,
you're doing a fantastic job.
Well, I mean, it's easy when you actually enjoy doing it, and I don't know if it's ironic or not, but I get the vast majority of my work done on the train, which I think should be a selling point for everybody else as well, but here we are, right? So I'm glad I have the confidence of the board, it sounds like. I'm glad that you guys agree kind of with where I'm trying to take things on a day-to-day. And yeah, so I will put these minutes together. It probably won't be until Monday or Tuesday that you'll actually see them. I have a busy weekend planned, but I will get that out to you guys. I've certainly got my marching orders for the next month. If you guys need anything in between, of course, let me know. Oh, John, did you get an email from an email address, a YouTube email address? I forgot that.
I didn't see that, no.
Okay.
So I'll double check again.
I emailed Steph, Chris. I emailed Steph.
I saw that
a couple days ago.
She's off this week.
Oh, is she? Okay.
Yeah, so she took this week off. I beat her too much during the year. She has to take some time off.
That's what you
Is she
get.
doing a little good old French August? Take all of August off.
Okay,
I'm at
well,
the
that sounds
beach.
like,
Shut up.
all right, well, maybe we'll circle back on that next week. If we have anything by like this time next week, we'll bug her on that again. I did email her. It shouldn't be too hard to set up, but sounds good. Okay, well, unless there's anything else, I'm looking for a final motion.
You know, I keep telling you this. You don't need a motion.
All right. Well, then
All you need to do is you need to say, are there any more items that anybody wants to bring up? And then if nobody brings up anything, you say,
all right. Well, then on that, I'm going to assume there's no more items. Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, you guys. Thank you as always. Oh, next meeting. I'm sorry, I should get that on the record as well. If I can pull up my calendar in time. Next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, September 15th. It will be same bat time, same bat channel, 5:30.
And then the Saturday, the quarterly meeting will be that Saturday.
That same Saturday, the 17th, or isn't it the 24th?
The following Saturday after the Thursday meeting.
So that would be the 24th of September.
24th. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good to me. Third Saturday.
Oh, the third Saturday is the 17th. I'm fine either way. I just want to make sure we're clear.
So when is the meeting?
So the next board meeting is Thursday, September 15th. And you're saying the quarterly meeting is Saturday, September 17th.
Correct.
Okay. Just want to make sure we're clear on that.
Yep, because it's set up that way so that the Thursday night meeting we get ready to do what we're gonna do.
Just want to make sure.
Yep.
Okay. So again, I really want a newsletter out by Thursday the 4th, or Thursday the 1st, excuse me, so that we have a couple of weeks to advertise the quarterly meeting, and then start to advertise the annual meeting as well. So I will be harassing you over the next 2 weeks. So
Excellent.
please. All right, unless there's anything else. All right, now I really am going to speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, thanks guys, and then we'll see you in a month.
Thanks. We'll see you guys.